Captain David heard from local sources of a village attack last night, during which sexual violence and looting was perpetrated by an armed group. He rapidly deployed a patrol.
As a peacekeeper, my role is to establish a protective security environment, including to protect civilians from conflict-related sexual violence. We do so, for example, by conducting targeted patrols to hotspots, by deploying immediately when civilians are at risk of harm, and by helping to build the capacity of national armed forces. The peacekeepers in my platoon engage with all community members and collect information to understand the risks against women, men, girls, and boys. In case of emergency, we also provide immediate medical assistance.
Women's protection advisors are deployed in UN field missions to support monitoring and reporting on conflict-related sexual violence. They advise all components of the mission on prevention and response to conflict-related sexual violence. They are deployed within the human rights component, which leads the mission's investigation, monitoring and reporting on the human rights situation.
My name is Prerna. I am a women's protection advisor. Would you be comfortable speaking with me? If yes, is there a location where you would feel safe to talk about what happened during the night?
Before, during, and after the interview, Prerna must ensure that her actions do not expose Marie to the risks of further harm. Potential harm includes re-traumatization, stigma, violent retaliation, and marginalization of Marie. Guiding principles must always be respected when working on conflict-related sexual violence, which are do no harm, confidentiality, informed consent, gender sensitivity, and the victim-survivor-centered approach.
What you describe sounds extremely painful, and I can see you are not feeling well. Before we continue further, I want you to know that there are medical services available in this area that provide care needed urgently for survivors of sexual violence. Would you like to know more?
Yes.
Conflict-related sexual violence affects everyone: women, men, girls, and boys. Stigmatization of victims or survivors remain a critical challenge. It is never the fault of a victim or survivor. Our NGOs' support centers provide security and livelihood programs to all survivors to help them recover from these crimes and regain control of their lives.
To discuss the role of communities in promoting gender equality, please join me, Chasiku, from the Missions Gender Unit for a dedicated radio program next Monday.
Referral pathways are established to facilitate access to multi-sectorial services for sexual violence survivors, including medical, psychosocial, socioeconomic, and legal support. These are provided free of charge and confidentially. Based on information about these services, Marie and other survivors can make their own informed decision about what is best for them.
I would like to talk to someone about what I have experienced.
Conflict-related sexual violence is a crime and also a violation of human rights and international humanitarian law. As a UN police officer, my role is to provide mentoring and capacity building to the national police on handling sexual violence cases and in investigations. UN Police supports the establishment of specialized sexual and gender-based violence units within the local police. We incorporate conflict-related sexual violence concerns in community-oriented policing and intelligence-led policing, among others. Information regarding sexual violence is rapidly shared with the Women's Protection Advisors or the Human Rights Component.
The mission's Human Rights Component and Justice and Corrections Component support the fight against impunity for conflict-related sexual violence. These components provide technical and operational support to national judicial authorities during investigations and the prosecution of sexual violence cases. Protection measures are put in place to ensure that Marie and her community can safely participate in trials.
I strongly condemn all forms of violence against civilians and urge all parties to immediately cease conflict-related sexual violence. I also call on all segments of society, families, local and religious leaders, and community members to end the stigmatization of victims, survivors, and harmful victim-blaming attitudes. Fighting conflict-related sexual violence is a priority for the UN. All components of the mission actively support authorities in preventing these crimes, bringing perpetrators to justice, and responding to the needs of survivors.
Marie and her friends are worried about other attacks and consider forming a local women's group. By participating in a community alert network supported by the mission's Civil Affairs section, they hope to contribute to their own protection and the protection of their community.
Thank you for your call. You can be part of the local protection mechanisms. Let me explain how you can contribute to your community's safety by, for example, sharing early warning alerts with the mission and authorities.
Conflict-related sexual violence does not happen without warning signs. For instance, conflict-related sexual violence frequently occurs by the roads when women and girls are going to the market, or while they are in fields or fetching water. There are high risks of conflict-related sexual violence during military or offensive operations, or when civilians are fleeing for safety, in refugee camps, or while in detention. All mission personnel should use these early warning indicators to identify risks of conflict-related sexual violence and trigger a timely response. For instance, patrol plans and engagement with conflict parties can be informed by analysis of risks of conflict-related sexual violence. Prevention is the most effective way of protecting civilians from conflict-related sexual violence.
I support women and girls in my community and want to become an advocate for all survivors of sexual violence. What happened to me should never happen again to anyone. With the training and support from humanitarian actors, I will soon be starting a small business to generate income. I want to regain control of my life and contribute to bringing peace to my community and country.
Here are key takeaways. Number 1. Conflict-related sexual violence, CRSV, refers to sexual violence that is directly or indirectly linked to a conflict. It can take the form of rape, sexual slavery, forced prostitution, forced pregnancy, forced marriage, among others. Number 2. Preventing and responding to CRSV is a mission-wide responsibility of UN field missions. Mission leadership and every uniformed and civilian component has a role to play. This begins with mainstreaming CRSV concerns into core areas of their work. Number 3. Women's Protection Advisors are deployed to provide advice, guidance, and training to mission components on how to integrate CRSV into their activities in line with the guiding principles of do no harm and the victim survivor-centered approach. You can reach out to them or the relevant focal point in the Human Rights Component. Number 4. The Policy and Handbook for UN Field Missions on Preventing and Responding to CRSV are a key resource to know more about what you can do to help prevent and respond to CRSV.